Is this working? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. You can take a seat if you would like, or hover. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting tonight on the unceded land of the Kulin Nation. I want to recognise 67,000 years of continued knowledge and connection to the land, and reflect on the talk that we heard on Friday evening, where Jeffa mentioned that there was 3,000 generations of knowledge, 3,000 generations of understanding of this place that we stand on today. Hi, Tom. This is my son, Tom. My name's Kate Dundas. This is Alicia Darville. We're here from Sustainability Victoria this evening, which is the little cheerleader, the state government agency which is dedicated to the reform of the waste industry, and we're trying to realise the circular economy in Victoria. We've been trying to look for ways to support Ross and his vision for a few years now, and it's really wonderful and exciting to be here this evening to celebrate what he and many others have been able to pull together. So we're celebrating Ross, his charisma, uniqueness, nerve and talent this evening, and also the collection of amazing people that he's managed to bring tonight. So we're going to hear firstly from James Legg from 6 Degrees, then Monique Woodward from Wow Wow Wah, a little bit hard to say, then Ben Shields from Dreamer Lab, and then Aaron Roberts from Edition Office. You're going to hear about their vision for what can be achieved in Melbourne. And this isn't just a talk, it's a pitch. So we want you to buy the ideas that you see tonight, and together we can transform Melbourne into a producer rather than a consumer. So thank you, and on to James.
Thank you, and I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this evening, and on the land on which the various new normal projects will soon be built, we hope, and pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. I'm going to talk to you this evening about a particular sexy subject of rotten vegetables. I need to have my handy thing here. Essentially, first of all, just a few stats. Essentially, Melbourne produces about 1,500 tonnes of organic waste or food waste that gets carried off. This is per day that gets carried off to landfill, which is about roughly the amount that would fill nine times, if it were a vessel, the Eureka Tower from top to bottom. So this happens daily, and this goes off to our landfill. In the landfill, it essentially breaks down and produces methane, much of which is released to the atmosphere. Methane is a greenhouse gas which is approximately 25 times more potent than CO2. So it's obviously a problem. But if you were to burn methane and ignite it, what you get out the other end, if you think back to year 10 chemistry, is that you get CH4 goes to CO2 and water, so carbon dioxide and water and energy. You get energy at the other end. So if we can somehow harness this waste that goes off to landfill, if we can harness that, then we reduce the amount of methane that goes into the atmosphere, and we get energy out the other end. So that's essentially what an anaerobic digester does, and that's what we're pitching this evening. The first couple of talks are. So the new normals idea essentially is to put or introduce anaerobic digesters across Melbourne. We'll need a number of them across the suburbs of Melbourne, of varying size depending on the amount of area that they're servicing. Anaerobic digesters can be sized up or down depending on what's going into them. Essentially, an anaerobic digester works like this. Everything goes in one end, which is essentially livestock waste, crops, wastewater, food waste. They go into a giant anaerobic digester, which is basically a vat with an army full of microbial beasties that do their work, and out the other end comes digestate, which is essentially a liquid fertiliser, which can go back into the agricultural business or can go into the parks and gardens, along with biogas, which is essentially methane. So methane can then either be burnt to produce heat, it can go into a turbine and generate electricity, it can go off into the gas grid essentially, or it can be used as a fuel for the internal combustion engines. So that's essentially what it is. So it's not particularly complicated technology. It exists already and is utilised around the world. It comes in all sorts of scales. This is a small one up in Creswick that we looked at. Recently we went and visited, and this was a demonstration project for the local council as a proof of concept to see if they could introduce one into their waste stream. So this is relatively small, and this is essentially waste goes into a macerator. From there it goes into the tank that you can see down the back, where it produces gas that goes off into a giant inflatable bag. That's Ross, our fearless leader, standing beside it. That's a bag full of methane, and then if it produces too much, it gets burnt on an off-gassing piece of equipment that then just flames it. So too much methane then just gets burnt anyway. So that's one scale. If you scale up from there, and this is one that's in England. In the UK, you can see that essentially the same kit is there, it's just bigger, and then in Europe, even bigger. So all this technology exists already on massive scales and on smaller scales. And then if you look at Copenhagen, although this is not an aerobic digester, it's actually an incinerator, but it does start to show you what the Europeans are doing and the aspirations they have with turning their waste into essentially into energy. So our proposal, the 6 Degrees proposal, and we'll talk about a similar thing but on a different site and a different proposal. Our one is looking at a much loved part of Melbourne, the Queen Victoria Market. The Queen Victoria Market was undergoing, and the precinct around it is undergoing a number of developments at the moment. We're involved in one, the Merkett site, and that is kind of going up. That's undergrounding about 700 car parks and producing some community facilities for the Melbourne City Council, as well as a tower that's going up, a residential tower that's paying for much of that. The next site, I believe, that's coming off, about to come out as an expression of interest, is the site to the south, down the bottom of this photo, which is essentially site D, which is about to be released. That will be developed, and possibly at the same time the car park in the middle will be developed. Now our proposal really is to put either into Site D or onto the car park redevelopment, which will happen concurrently or shortly thereafter, which is going to become public space, is to incorporate an anaerobic digester for the Queen Victoria market. So the QVM produces, as you can imagine, an enormous amount of organic matter and organic waste that gets shipped off and again just goes off to landfill and produces methane that's not captured. So we're trying to close that loop here. It seems to be a pretty easy way of introducing the idea and the concept to the people of Melbourne. So what we're trying to do, I guess, is to make sustainability not a hair shirt, that sustainability should actually be part of the future and something that's fun and engaging. So what our proposal then does is that essentially we will then, the gas that comes off it goes into the gas stream that supplies all the tenancies in the market. Plus it goes to servicing all the forklifts that keep the market going day and night, along with the food trucks that also service the market, particularly in the evenings, where they service the markets in the evenings and the day, but in some of the new functions, particularly around this sort of new public open space. And then also, I guess the sexiest bit of it is that they also go to then providing the power for an outdoor nighttime cinema. So I guess what that then ends up doing really is to demonstrate to people in Melbourne that their waste stream can actually be utilised and their waste stream can go back into producing something which gives back. And so rather than squandering, then we're actually using everything and utilising all our waste. And so that's our proposal. And you can see all the various elements there. Just to zoom in, essentially what we're doing is the nighttime cinema and the food trucks you can see and the forklift down the bottom, and that's it. Thank you. And I'll hand over now to Wawawa.
Thanks, James. Oh, thank you. So, my name is Monique Woodward. I run a medium-sized practice in Melbourne, in Collingwood. We do a third of our work is sort of yummy renovations for families. A third is transporting, I guess, or translating that residential DNA into government schools and community facilities. And a third of our work is pro bono, climate visionary type of work. So New Normal, obviously, being part of that. We're also certified, so we're passionate about business being a force for good and meeting a global higher standards for social and environmental sustainability. So when Ross came to us with the topic of waste to energy, we were excited. Essentially, as James thoroughly explained, it's taking organic matter and turning it into biofuel. I'm really into marketing, and so I wanted to rebrand that as organic energy because I think it sounds sexier than waste to energy. But as James spoke about, we shouldn't really be sending food waste into landfill when we can clearly be using it to power our lives. Our task was to make anaerobic digesters sexy. Everyone understands the tech, A plus B equals C. But what we were engaged to do was bringing culture and tech together. And so we partnered with 6 Degrees because we were both digester lovers with Non-Studio, who is a filmmaker, and created this really beautiful visceral kind of celebration of the tech and bringing culture and tech together. So I'm on the board of Yarra Pools, and in 2008, the NGV sponsored us to do this sort of beautiful fly-through of Yarra Pools, which has the mission to, our sort of $60 million scheme to put a pool in the Yarra and make or promote the idea that the Yarra should be swimmable. And so I guess for us, it was no huge leap that we would combine wellness and waste together and sort of explore the opportunities within these sort of surprising programs. And we approached it in 3 different ways, so public, private, and people or community. We looked at the benefits for each, and so for public, it would obviously be reduced running costs, reduced emissions, and waste management. For private, it would obviously be big profits. Ross has a financial background, and the 150-page report that's flying around has the kind of data on how these pay back. And I guess for people, it's the agency that is possible with these things. So having a tangible impact on an engagement with the climate emergency that so many people feel passionate about. So for us, we could have chosen any council facility, but we chose pools because we love pools. And we chose Fitzroy Pool because it seemed like a really unique opportunity to kind of promote the idea that, we could capitalise on the retail of Smith Street and Brunswick Street to collect waste for our scheme. So this is our digester. We've put this into a big tower. We've stacked it vertically and created this amazing new entry into Fitzroy Pool. So you can see here that we've really glorified the tech and coupled it with a sauna and a spa that could sit next to this tower that would produce, obviously, power to power these initiatives, but also fertilizer for the park next door. And so here you can see individuals coming and dropping off their food waste for free entry to the pool in their bathers. And but more importantly, I guess, you can see the rubbish guy doing his rubbish thing. And so he has collected the food waste from around town. But it is kind of this, visual language that's sort of celebrating the tech and making it sexy again. But we can't, as James said, we need 150 of these things around Melbourne, so we can't rely on councils alone. It needs to be a wholesale take-up from public as well. And so we kind of, Ross worked out that it pays for each other. It pays for itself in 6 years. And so, we kind of had the idea again of coupling the digesters with this feeling of wellness, but I guess in a more luxurious, high-end version that would be about celebrating the microbrewery coffee roaster aesthetic of the digester, dealing with the stinkiness problem. That's a design challenge, easy to solve, but partnering that with wellness and the opportunities and marketing opportunities behind that. So we already have a developer that we're doing a feasibility for, Orb, and their site is in North Melbourne. And so he is really excited by the idea of celebrating the digester, even putting it at ground floor, and then allowing that to be part of that marketing strategy to appeal to the demographic who are environmentally conscious and passionate about sustainability and creating a regenerative and disruptive economy. So through the feasibility that we're doing with Finding Infinity, we're fleshing out all of the issues. So one of the key ones is an amendment to his planning permit. So that's an ask for City of Melbourne. But also, I guess, understanding the food waste that's required. So the whole development, it's a mixed-use development, so that would produce about 1 to 2 tonnes of food waste a day, whereas we need 10 to power this thing. And so I guess there's these questions of, is it a council collection that's capitalising on the opportunities here, or is it a private? And so I don't know, is there someone here from Cirque du Soil? Yeah, yeah, thanks for coming. I'm using you in my press. And so the third way is people and community. So pre-COVID, we were proposing this huge thing. Post-COVID, we said, well, maybe we pivot and propose a smaller intervention, a smaller pool. We partnered with Peter McIntyre Partnerships, and Aloha Pools, thinking, how could we do this temporary pool? It could be in 6 different locations. bringing our pro bono projects together in the hope that maybe one day we'll get paid for them. That you could couple the anaerobic digester with the toilet block, and then also the pool. So it would be an off-the-grid, sustainable initiative. The pool is proprietary, and so it would be a swimmable situation. But also at night time, the floor would raise to become a platform for talks, and it would be this sort of city activation. That got us excited. So the ask, we're all here. You've all got your bidding sticks, right? Placards. So public, private, and people. So we worked out that it would cost around $4.5 million to implement one of these, mass rollout digester coupled with a council facility. So the digester itself would be 2.8 mil, and then the rest is just to create some glorious, architectural icon. Then we put 7 mil on the luxury high-end private wellness centre combo. And then the dream, which is, the pool, we worked out would be about a 10 mil ask. So yeah, if anyone here wants to buy any of those, just let us know. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. Our fearless leader will be up on stage soon. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name's Ben. Welcome to A New Normal. I run a practice called Dreamer, and we work out of Brunswick. We're an ethical architecture practice, and we're interested in connecting people with each other, with community, and with the environment. So, just to recap a little bit, A New Normal, 15 projects over 10 initiatives, turning Melbourne from a consumer to a producer. And why is it different? It links sustainability with culture. So it gives sustainability a feeling and it allows people to connect to it. We think this is a durable solution because it embeds sustainability into the fabric of Melbourne and it makes it hard to shift. And ultimately it makes sustainability something with heart, something with feeling, something that people can not just connect to but can experience. So we've heard about anaerobic digesters connecting to cinemas and to pools. So our proposal is our initiative is the End Landfill initiative, and we're connecting waste with art. Our proposal is for Replace Me Gallery, a retrospective art gallery making the invisible visible and celebrating the beauty and value of the discarded. So, landfill. Why should we end it? Landfill's unsustainable, pretty obviously for its massive ongoing spatial requirements and the associated environmental damage with that. And probably more problematic is probably more problematic is the things that end up in landfill. So the things that we make that are unavoidably destined for landfill. So obviously there's the things that we know about, such as single-use plastics, and then there's non-reusable construction products, and various other things. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of finite resources and environmental cost that goes into making those things. And ultimately we want to ban the sale of any product that's ultimately destined for landfill. So, why connect waste and art? The purpose of art is to open up a conversation with the world, good art helps. Sorry, I think I'll move slides. Good art helps us to build a critical literacy in topics that we may not have otherwise known how to broach. It's an important instrument for moving conversations about topics we care about forward, and in this instance, waste. So art's more than a critique, though. Yes, it can bring to light difficult things and make commentary on some parts of the world that we'd like to change, but it can also be offer possibilities for action. And in Melbourne, art is massive. There's the big stuff like NGV, but then there's so many smaller galleries. But it doesn't just end there. There's our music venues, the amazing festivals that we host, and I think it permeates through all of culture, the way we approach our food, our interest in design, and the type of things we consume on television and media. So it brings us to Replace Me, our gallery space. We believe that this space is required for communication, awareness, and education for Melburnians to better understand the relationship to the waste we produce and to help us make better choices. The popularity of such a space would also send a message of support to political leaders to introduce much needed regulation. Replace Me would be a space for exhibitions, for education, for reflection. And we propose that as part of the permanent exhibit, a series of landfill cores that you can see there, that would be drilled out of landfill sites around Melbourne and in a similar way to ice cores drilled out of Antarctica. And it would help, they'd be curated by artists, and it would help us understand our changing relationship to waste over time. So as part of Melbourne Design Week, as part of A New Normal, we chose to collaborate with Lauren Adams, who's here tonight, on a piece of artwork that you might find at the Landfill Gallery, and it's on display just through the door over there. The work is called Regulatory Nonsense, and essentially regulations, what we choose to regulate tells a story about the things that we collectively value. So it asks what would happen if our regulations were written by poets, artists, or philosophers, and would we be any better equipped to end landfill? And the work uses AI, basically uses an artificial intelligence bot to rewrite Victorian waste policy. So, I think the gallery is a different solution to the other solutions that you've seen previously. It's something that's long term, and it's about slowly changing minds. It's about permeating ideas through Melbourne. And as Lauren said to me today, when you see an artwork that you connect with, it changes you, and that's what we hope to achieve with the gallery. So the ask, we think that in the right space in Melbourne, we actually think it might be the best value of all the projects. For $800,000, we believe that this space could become a reality, and it's an opportunity to leave a lasting legacy in Melbourne, in sustainability, art, and in innovation. So if that interests you, we would love to have further conversation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Roberts from Edition Office. I believe that most of us here tonight and those watching online are likely already on board with the notion that we must act more quickly in relation to the challenges of climate change, and that we understand that this requires adjusted modes of production and living. So here we are in this amazing speculative program put together by Ross, Finding Infinity, and the team of New Normal, hoping to speed up this adjustment by suggesting pathways forward and sinking real dollar contributions to the projects. Architecture has a rich history of speculative projects aiming to adjust the way we think about urban realm and how we could potentially plan our cities. From Corbusier to Archigram's No Stop City, the actual tool employed here to suggest such change is storytelling and narrative. In this vein, but in a more overt and developed sense, I've been a fan of the work of Liam Young for some time now and was fascinated by his recent project at the NGV Triennale titled Planet City. Liam's work aims to engage us in complex urban issues through film and narrative, through storytelling. The project basically suggests that we should move the entire world's population into 0.5% of its Earth mass to allow the rest of the world to be wild. It's a really great project. I suggest you all get along to have a look at it. It's through this rich and complex storytelling that we enable ourselves to question what the realities of such propositions would be like. We project ourselves into these imagined worlds, these particular scenarios, and ask what problems and opportunities might exist. What might life be like if it were real? These visions allow us to question and to propose changes to our current conditions with more conviction as we have felt the possibility, we've imagined ourselves in those possibilities. Ross and his team must be commended for curating this program of possibilities. At the start of the process, the idea of rapid change at the scale of the city and making any of the proposals a reality quickly felt far-fetched. However, it's precisely this action of speculation, of storytelling, of carefully constructing narrative, which has allowed a number of the projects to already receive support and to now move into the realms of reality. For our contribution to the program, we embrace the notion of storytelling in a far less complex and developed way than the precedents I spoke about earlier. And at risk of appearing irreverent, we were interested in combining the idea of changing our relationship to waste with the narrative of religion or notion of ritual as a way of drawing viewers in, opening a space for imagination and projection. I didn't visit many churches as a child, however, I have strong memories of the uplifting and self-reflective nature of the volumes and the emotions they aim to evoke. I also remember the ritual visits to the suburban tip, the procession of cars and trailers, the intense smell and the cathartic hurling of waste and pieces of our lives into the enormous pit, the excavators crushing and pushing the heaving mass into consolidated piles. There are many churches, mosques, and places of religious gathering in our cities, and equally many local waste recovery centres. In addition to these cultural nodes, the new church of Bunnings, those enormous sheds of tools and hardware, which, with equally huge numbers of followers, worshipping the tool shop and the altar of paint suppliers, have rapidly filled our suburbs. So with this in mind, we developed the idea of a religiosity of waste, a ritualistic yet everyday notion of an adjusted relationship to waste, and instead of the stench and Mad Max sensibilities of our suburban waste resource centres, which we're equally a fan of for the record, we imagined great cathedrals of circularity, where waste is not seen as a byproduct, but rather it is revered as something sacred, or rather our resources are sacred and enabled to be reused in an endless circular cycle, rather than the linear process which is common in today's society. The idea of the circular economy is not new. There are a number of institutions taking this very seriously. Millions of tonnes of waste go to landfill every year. Our modern day mantra is we make, we use, we dispose, we pollute. To break this destructive cycle of pollution and carbon emission, we must change our relationship to production, moving from a linear process of making, using and disposing to a circular system of making, using and reusing. In order to amplify this circular economy, Edition Office proposed a changed mantra, and with it a new church. Within its hallowed walls, waste is sorted, recycled and items are repaired. A multi-storey archive reaches upwards, a great library of parts to be perused for spares. Underground, in a deep technological crypt, machines crush, shred, pulverise and melt waste, consecrating materials into raw and hybrid forms for reuse. The altar reinforces the reduction of waste by becoming the ultimate public tool library. Workshops at ground level provide spaces to repair and teach, allowing the public a live view into this theatre of reuse. Galleries show beautiful cores of waste artworks at street level, further engaging the public. The building itself, acknowledging its function, repurposes an existing structure and superimposes a new mass timber structural system which itself can be unbolted and repurposed for future alternate use. We were interested in that site up at the corner of Victoria and Rathdown, the big council building that's been kind of spray painted and vacant forever. Our proposal is apparently only asking for $1 million in investment to fit out a 200 to 400 metre squared space, but we had really thought of something that was much higher and more intensive, so we'd be happy with 10 times that amount. Thank you.
Hey, I'll be very brief. Just to kind of summarise, I think, are you going to say something afterwards, Alicia, or I'm wrapping it up? You will. Okay. To summarise, this is a $100 billion opportunity for this city. And if you don't believe me, we spent 2 years writing a 140-page report to document it. But in the end, who cares about a report? Tonight, there are 15 renders, about 15 projects that we've translated that $100 billion opportunity into 15 projects that we want to build. We're actively seeking 50 mil to try and build the first 15 projects. And then, I had some other slides, but I don't know what the other it is. So we're trying to seek 50 mil this year, 500 mil next year, a billion the year after, 10 billion the year after, and 18 billion between 2025 and 2030 each year from there. Might sound crazy and ambitious, but if we want to become the world's first self-sufficient city, that's how we do it, that's how much it will cost, and that's how we can pull it off. The 100 billion will pay for itself in less than 10 years. It'll create 80,000 jobs and 40,000 ongoing jobs from there. 80,000 in construction. We've broken down the 15 projects of what they cost, and we've put a price tag on all of them. The guys have mentioned what they're worth, but this is not something that is a vision. I think a lot of people have seen what we're trying to do and seen it as a vision, but this is something that we're doing. We're relentlessly optimistic about the project, and we're going to make it happen, but we need help. We do need cash and we need sites to deliver these projects. So in some ways the project became alive after Will, who works with me, and I had been sitting in my backyard doing calculations for a couple of years, and we went out to 15 of Melbourne's best architects and asked them to help us out and become part of the project. And the group went from 2 to 17 or more, and it became a shared ownership kind of situation. Tonight we're asking all of you guys to help us out and become part of that too. So thanks so much for coming. Help us find some cash and help us find some sites, and let's do this thing. Thank you.